and welcome to Founder Friday. As always, we are thrilled to be sharing with you today. My name is Karen, and today David and I are going to discuss a question that we receive from time to time, and that has been a hot topic with our customers lately due to the claim that a blogger has put out surrounding heavy metals and sea salt. However, we get questions about heavy metals just in general in food. And so, David, the question for you today is, how concerned should we be about heavy metals in our food, and what should we be looking for?
Well, number one, yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Absolutely, we should be concerned about heavy metals in food, but I would say we're much more concerned about heavy metals that have been added into our food than heavy metals that are naturally occurring. And when you look at lab results only, they don't differentiate. Heavy metal that has been, for instance, in sea salt, that may have been in the ocean, you know, completely soluble in water for unknown amounts of time. It's a mineral that's in the ocean. It gets into the sea salt as it dehydrates. That kind of a mineral is going to be much more um, useful to the body, even if it's a heavy metal. It's if our body needs minerals of all sorts, even heavy metals to a very small extent. We have way too many of them. That's very true. But if they're coming from that source, the liver and the kidneys can get rid of it very easily. If it's coming from an artificial source, and that's where we talk about things like pesticides and herbicides often have heavy metals as part of the components of them. That's why that's one of the reasons, that was one of the very first things that my dad realized before he went started farming organically. He was using a wheat treating substance to treat the wheat for planting. You ever seen pink seeds? Anyway, if you haven't, that's a good thing. Um, but that was mostly mercury that was put on there from a completely artificial source. He was up to his armpits in that, um, handling it. Nobody said it was highly toxic, and he ended up getting a lot of it in his system. That's very different than mercury that might be naturally occurring in our food system.
So, David, when you look at naturally occurring minerals, I would imagine it all starts with soil health and the minerals that are in the soil that the plants are growing in. Would that be correct?
When we're talking about food, now sea salt is a little bit different because that's coming from the ocean. There are a lot of microbacteria in the ocean as well. It's a very living, the ocean is living, but the soil is extremely living. Soil is alive. And when we are looking for nutrients for plants, the way that nature made them to be, all the minerals that are in the soil have to be broken down by microbes. They're little organisms that live in the soil. They feed on the sugars that come from the roots of the plants that are in the soil, and they break down the minerals that are in the soil and make them bioavailable for the plant. Once they're bioavailable for the plant from a microbe, not from something that was sprayed onto the plant afterwards and it might have absorbed into the leaf a little bit, that's very different. But if it came from the microbes that are in the soil, the plant uptakes that mineral. It's even if it's a heavy metal, um, our bodies can handle it if we have too much. One of the things that, a few years ago, uh, was kind of a big deal was copper. And copper is a metal, um, or considered to be a metal, um, and um, it's something that people were saying was basically toxic. Don't get too much copper. Be careful with copper. And copper, if it's just a metal that's mined and you were to ingest a bunch of that, it can be toxic. But the deficiency of copper in the soil has created a host of problems. Um, we're, you know, we're, we've been learning more and more. One of the Azure supplements that we recently picked up was actually a whole food copper supplement. Um, and the reason that we found now is that copper, the naturally occurring source, not talking about sucking on, copper spoons or something, um, or copper wires, I guess I should say, um, are absolutely essential to balance the need for iron in our bodies. So iron is basically another ferrous heavy metal in its raw source. But we all know that in our bodies, we have to have a certain amount of iron to be able for our blood to function properly. If we don't have enough iron or bioavailable iron, we will get anemic and the blood is unable to get enough oxygen to the cells. Now, um, when people have been anemic, the medical establishment is just saying, oh, we'll just inject them with some iron. Well, that works extremely temporarily, but it just makes the problem even worse
So David,
because
you're saying it's about the source, right? We've talked
well,
about that,
it's about the source and it's about balance as well.
yeah, because we've talked about that. I've been told for years that I'm anemic, right? Add more iron, put more iron into your body, eat more iron-rich foods. And so, they're looking at one element within the blood, but not looking at the full picture, kind of like we were discussing earlier today. So, what does that look like for us when we're looking at the source? We have enriched flours and things that are out there that uh, we're told, to put things in our food or to add additional foods to our diet so that we can get those things in our diet. But a lot of it's synthetic. So what does that look like for us? And talk to us about the source and why it's important to know where it's coming from.
The source is absolutely key because, and the difference in the sources. So in a lab, they when they do the testing for a metal or a mineral or anything else, it picks up all of it, no matter what the source is. That's completely irrelevant to lab equipment. It is not irrelevant to our bodies, though. So when, hey, everyone started using bleached white flour, there became extreme anemia and vitamins deficiencies. So, in man's ultimate wisdom, we just decided to enrich the flour. So, we take everything good out of it, and then we enrich something else back in it. Same thing with the sea salt. You know, don't get it from the ocean anymore, mine it, refine it, and add iodine back into it. Um, it's not, um, you know, it doesn't work that way. The real situation is that we have to have these minerals from the microbes in the soil. So because the lab said it was all the same, they just put regular old iron, basically rust, into your flour. And then we wonder how come anemia problems just got worse. Well, that's pretty simple because the iron, long term, that you're getting in that flour is not from a plant. It's not from a microbe in the soil that brings it up through the plant and makes it bioavailable to our bodies so our bodies can utilize it. And even more importantly, well, I shouldn't say more importantly, but just as important is the balance. So now, oh, we think, the white flour use is causing anemia, so we're adding iron and riboflavin and whatever else from any old source, whatever's cheapest, basically rust. Um, if you get right down to the bottom line. And then, uh, but we know now that copper and iron have to be bioavailable in this correct balance, or the iron really isn't going to be usable to the body. So, if the plant is picking it up out of the soil and you're getting it from vegetables or fruits or even from whole grains to some extent, um, you're going to get a certain amount of bioavailable copper with the iron most of the time. That keeps that in balance in our bodies for the most part so that, we don't get excess iron and not enough copper, which is what most of America has today. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is because of the use of, even in the soil, because of the use of iron implements in the soil all the time, plows, did all the everything, iron, that there is more iron available in the soil for the bacteria to work on. Now, it takes a long time for basically the rust off of a plow to get broken down so that it can be bioavailable to the plant, but it can happen. That's what a microbe does. It eventually breaks that down and makes it bioavailable. Because we know nobody ever uses any copper, then it's become the raw source of copper has become somewhat deficient in the soil. And so the microbes don't have enough copper to break down in the soil, even if it was available to be able to be in the correct balance. Um, but the copper, the iron, or any other mineral that is broken down by the plant, by the microbes, taken up in the plant, becomes bioavailable for our bodies to utilize. So if we get our iron from spinach or raisins or any other food source, in healthy soil, it will have enough copper that it will be balanced. So you're not just getting the iron. In healthy soil, you're getting a version of the iron that is very bioavailable to our bodies so that our blood cells can immediately use that to make the red blood cells to transfer oxygen to the cell level in our bodies. But when we get iron that is not pre-digested properly by the plants or way out of balance with the copper, iron and copper is one of those things. It's kind of like, copper is the general, iron is the soldier. And you get a whole bunch of iron in there without enough copper, you get free radical iron. So it creates a chaos basically. In and your now you're going to have to try to get rid of free radicals and all this stuff because it allows oxygen to escape. We call that free radical oxygen. So it's damaging to the body. It's in the right balance, and that's roughly 50 to 1 ish. Um, then it's properly balanced. The copper takes care of controlling the iron content, and we have healthy, strong blood that gets plenty of oxygen to our cells and makes a much healthier person.
So, David, when customers are asking about us testing heavy metals, or we get the question, do you test for heavy metals? Do you test for cadmium in chocolate, or do you have tests for arsenic in rice? And just lots of questions surrounding that. What's the answer to that? And when it comes to lab testing, you talked a little bit about lab testing. It sounds like we don't see the full picture if you're just testing for one specific thing within a food.
You don't. And we do not routinely test for any of those things here at Azure. And the reason is because a lab equipment cannot tell the difference between the bioavailable minerals and the artificial minerals that might be there. I am much more inclined to make sure that we know where our food is coming from, that they haven't added herbicides or pesticides that has heavy metals in it, that there's no glyphosate, there's no, you know, copper sprayed on as a fungicide last minute right before the fruit is harvested. Those are kind of things that, we don't want to see that. Although, if somebody's putting copper on early in the season that can be pre-digested by microbes, that's a completely different thing. It could still show up in the peach at the same level. But which is it? Is it bioavailable healthy copper, or is it copper that's going to actually damage our bodies that, can stay in the fat cells for, months, years, or a very long time, uh, because it's not bioavailable and it gets into our bodies, gets stuck in our cells. It's, you know, um, it's what's damaging. So, no, we don't do lab testing. Uh, our testing is to make sure that the food is pure, not based on these levels. And, there's even things that Azure sells that has California warnings on it. Says, hey, this is known to cause this and that and the other in the state of California. Well, the whole, you know, deal about the California stuff is that that's all lab-based testing.
So
So
that's
when,
Proposition 65, right?
yeah,
That in
Prop
California?
65, sorry,
Yeah.
I should have said that straight up. But we're talking about Prop 65 warning that's on a lot of the food. And we even have, yeah, like I say, there's a few of those things at Azure that we have. And one that comes to mind, and I believe it's one of the healthiest foods that God gave us, is kelp. Kelp it's a sea vegetable, grows in the seafloor, um, you know, filters through seawater for its whole life, very high in minerals, bioavailable minerals for the most part, and kelp also is very, very um, good host for microbes. So microbes just cling to kelp, and so most of the minerals that are in kelp are very bioavailable. But when you actually go and look at a lab test, it can have iodine that's beyond what California at least considers safe in kelp because they can't tell the difference between bioavailable iodine that's going to make our thyroids thrive and iodine that is basically a toxin, and they can't tell the difference. And so with this Prop 65 warning, it ends up on a lot of things that contain kelp because it's too healthy. It's got all this bioavailable iodine and other minerals as well. But that's, I think, the one that makes it trip the Prop 65 thing. But
Yeah.
I that's the kind of thing that I thought I should point out with this
I've seen
is
that
that
warning on sweet potatoes as well in the state of California because of uh, the minerals within the sweet potatoes.
yeah,
And I believe they do that for asparagus as well.
yeah, potatoes, asparagus, these are foods that are, even not just sweet potatoes, but also just regular potatoes. I've even seen it on, like potato chip bags and different things on potatoes themselves because potatoes actually uptake minerals pretty well, as do carrots, beets, um, kale. There's a lot of vegetables. Asparagus, as you mentioned, extremely healthy vegetable when you get right down to it. It's the shoot of that young plant. And the minerals, I mean, that is where that plant is concentrating all its minerals, and you're eating it right when it's shooting out of the ground, and all those minerals are concentrated to make this great big frond, and you're eating that right then. So the mineral content, but that is the minerals that come from the microbes that are in the soil for the most part. I mean, some of the conventional stuff, there may be junk on there, but if you're eating good organic asparagus, there isn't much, much healthier food. But if you're actually to test in a lab, it looks like it may look like it has heavy metals in it. It's it does. But again, any heavy metals that are coming from the microbes in the soil, when our body becomes out of balance and has too many, and we can't utilize all of them, our liver simply just flushes them out. It's not it's not damaging.
So David, talking about excuse me, talking about the labs, is that why we sometimes hear that they do lab testing between conventional and organic, and there's no difference between conventional and organic? That seems to be a narrative that is out there.
Mhm. Yeah. And again, and I could, this is one that, for instance, protein is very prominent in this arena. So we'll go, hey, what's the protein levels of this, wheat or grain or beans or whatever it is? And so if you test it in the lab, and so let's take wheat for instance, because that's something I'm super familiar with, and it's something that, so wheat, you know, typically most bread wheat has somewhere between 12 and 14% protein in it. And typically, whether it's organic or conventional, they're still running for that same protein content. That's total protein. Well, protein is just a generic term for amino acids. Amino acids are not all the same. There's, 24-ish of amino acids, and in our bodies, and we need at least 22 of those according to science currently, of different proteins that we need in our bodies to make healthy muscles and so on. So when wheat, the first amino acid that forms is L-glutamine. It's an amino acid. It's one that we need, but it is able to be formed in wheat that is pushed with anhydrous ammonia. Whereas if so, if it builds up a huge quantity of just L-glutamine in the wheat, it will look like it's testing for all proteins, all 24 amino acids. And if there's just one in there, but there's a lot of it, it's still going to test high in protein. For healthy organic wheat that was not pushed by anhydrous ammonia, but only has the microbes breaking down the nutrients that are in the soil, even if it's the organic fertilizer that's put on, the microbes are breaking that down. It's going to create the amino acids in a balanced and complete amino acid chain. So when you actually send that to the lab and get the protein content, it's going to be about the same, maybe even a little bit lower, but it's going to have a utilizable amino acid chain with all the amino acids, hopefully at least 6 to 8 amino acids in wheat that are in relative balance. And that's what makes all the difference in the world. You'd send that to the lab, oh, we have a protein content of 14%. It's all L-glutamine or it's a balanced amino acid chain. It's still 14% protein, and that's what the lab equipment sends back. So it can look exactly the same in some cases. Um, you know, and typically the more remote that you get into even lab tests between organic and conventional, the things like protein and stuff, those will be about the same. But if you get into the more remote minerals, organic starts to really shine because a lot of those are not. Remember, there are, according to science right now, there are 72 minerals that we need for optimum health. Um, there may even be more, but so far that's kind of the official number. Um, what lab test have you ever seen that tested for all 72 that was comparing organic to conventional? No, it's only going to test for the big few. And there is a huge, even in that, in variation. I have a friend who has a lab. Anyway, they were working on testing for nutrients in various vegetables and stuff, and they were testing actually spinach for iron. And so they got samples from all different places, from the grocery store, from the organic farmer, from the biodynamic farmer, and all these different places. And it was kind of as suspected. The more conventional stuff was lower in iron in general. However, the bioavailable iron content in spinach varied by 100 times from the lowest sample they had to the highest sample they had.
Wow.
It's, all that was not all created equally. And that's just in one thing. So if you think about it, oh, I'm going to get my iron from the spinach, and it is good. It's a good way to get your iron. It's perfectly bioavailable. But if of the best quality spinach, you ate 1 pound of that this week, you would have had to eat 100 pounds of the worst spinach to get the same amount of iron that week. It's very doable to eat 1 pound in a week. It's pretty impossible to eat 100 pounds in a week. So, you know, food, in spite of testing, one way or another, no matter if it's tested or not tested, food is not created equally. It's very dependent on how it's grown, what the soil is like that food lives in.
So, David, thank you so much for providing insight in that. We've had so many questions from customers, and I know this is going to be so helpful as we're trying to navigate the space because there's so much information that comes in all different directions to us surrounding this topic. And so, as we're getting close to our end, the time of our time here together, I'm hearing you say the lab testing is not really the full picture, and that it's important for us to know the source of the food and what foods we're putting in our body and what's in the foods. Would you like to summarize that for us? Just kind of pull all those pieces together as we're wrapping up our time together.
Yeah, it's super easy to get wrapped up in a lab test or or looking at one piece of the picture. But remember, in health, just as it is in life in general, balance is key. It's about the big picture. You can always look at little aspects, and you can look at the small picture all day long, and you're only going to get a little piece of the picture. Like the blind man and the elephant, the guy who just felt the tusks, he only got that little piece of the picture. That's kind of the way a lab test is compared to healthy food. We need to look at the whole picture. How healthy is the soil that this food is being raised in? How healthy is the environment that it's growing in? How what's the microbes like in that soil? That's really the bottom line. And, is this farmer nurturing the microbes in the soil? And when we're looking at things like salt that may not be in agricultural products, what's the big picture? Is this dried seawater naturally occurring just the way it is in the sea? Or is this some kind of refined thing? Something, do we refine it down and try to add something back in? Look at the big picture. God made a lot of things for us in balance if we just use it the way it was made. The soil, the microbes, balance in the plants, we're going to get healthy plants. If we need salt, seawater with all the minerals that are in seawater, things like the kelp, we're going to get a healthy balance in from the sea. Um, it's just we don't need to be so focused on the lab results as we need to be focused on, is it the whole product? Is it complete? Is it the complete seawater? Is it the complete healthy food that came from microbe biodiverse soil? Or is it something that was refined down, pushed with anhydrous ammonia or some other synthetic to create bigger plants? And then you add, oh, it's deficient. Let's add something in. Or in the same with heavy metals. Now, we do have to be careful with heavy metals in today's world. Obviously, vaccinations are full of heavy metals. There are certain kinds of glass and pottery that have some heavy metals, and usually in the decoration part, there's things like that, and those are definitely not absorbable into our system. So we do need to be careful about some of those things. I'm not saying, hey, just ignore heavy metals as a problem. But when we're talking about food, let's look at the whole picture.
David, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm so thankful for the standards that we have here at Azure, the vetting that we do to ensure that we're bringing great, healthy products to our customers and it's coming from the right sources. And so thank you for setting that example for us here. I know that I appreciate that and our customers appreciate that. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate David sharing his perspective on this question and what we really should be looking for in our food. And we just want to let you know, if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to our customer care team at info@azurestandard.com with questions that you would like to see us answer on a future Founder Friday. Thank you again.
Thank you.